Welcome! In this video, I will talk about how growing up in poverty impacted how I felt about myself and how it led to me feeling insecure. I'm going to talk about different ways that it impacted me going through college, and then I will talk about 6 different factors that really impact how poverty impacts our self-confidence, self-image. What do you think about yourself? So, thank you for coming. Also, halfway through the video, I stopped and I started later on, so that's why you see different lighting. Okay, thanks. Today, I want to discuss how living in poverty can really impact your mental health. And when I say poverty, I think it really depends on like what you are going through and if you feel like that resonates with you or not. At the end of the day, I feel like being poor means not having enough money or resources to really do what it is that you want to do, when the access to certain things is blocked to you because there is not enough time in the day because someone at home is working and they can't take you or pay for something, right? Or you have to stay behind to take care of a sibling or get some work done to make more income, even as a child. When you don't have enough money to get access to like healthy foods like vegetables, especially I think about access to fast food, how it's so much more affordable than like getting vegetables and like cooking your own meals. And in that same breath, right, if you are working or like not able to work, right, because you're on disability or something, then you can't make enough money or have enough time to make meals for your family at home. There are so many ways that one can be poor and not even realize it. So, anyways, I want to talk about how this, for me at least, how growing up poor really led to me feeling insecure and like I didn't realize like that it really impacted me until like much later in life. And I want to say that being poor isn't the same experience for everyone. There are similarities for sure, but it depends like where you live, who you are, what kind of family you have, like so many different things that are, specific to the person. For us, I'm an immigrant, and so we came to Chicago when I was 9, and there was like 9 of us living in this 2-bedroom apartment in Pilsen, and it was so hard because we didn't have any resources. Like we came here with nothing, and so we were living on my. But it's really important to view poverty in like an intersectional way, because not only does poverty impact us personally or in our family, right, but there are different aspects, different systems in place in wherever you live, and I'm talking specifically to the United States of America. Insecurity has to do with trusting and safety, right? External factors, internal factors. One can be insecure if I'm not trusting in myself or my abilities or my safety, right? If I feel like I can't do a task, or if I don't feel personally like I'm in a safe environment, and that could be like in my household, right, around the people that I live with or my friendships, right, or in the neighborhood that I live in. Like, what is that, do I feel safe with them? And then being able to trust external factors, right? Like, do I feel like people at school, people at work, do I feel like they are people that I can trust? Like, they are people that I can go to if I have a problem. My city, my neighborhood, right? Is it a place where I can walk around freely, where I feel like I am not going to be hurt or in any way like compromised? I feel like when people talk about insecurity, in the same breath, they talk about confidence, right? But the thing is, like, if you don't feel safe, if you feel like the relationships you've had have been situations where you've been unsafe, if the place you live feels unsafe, like, of course, why would you be confident that things would turn out right? And here we get into attachment, right? How growing up we're conditioned and we learn to trust adults and trust each other based on like our relationship with our caregivers, on our relationship with with our neighborhood, our school, like what we go about our life, like what we do. And so if you're not secure, if you haven't had secure relationships or secure interactions with your world, like it does lead to feeling insecure and it does lead to a lack of confidence, whether that's internal or external. Not feeling safe in whatever form leads to things like anxiety, depression, overthinking, like worriedness, restlessness, like can't sleep, can't eat. Like it impacts our whole body in different ways, which is what I did, right? Because growing up, my family, like several of my brothers were like, Sophia is going to be the one that takes us out of poverty. I was dedicated in school. I took my time. I learned English pretty fast. I did all the extra credit. I went to all the after school like activities and I really worked my butt off. And I was able to, after high school, I was able to get Posse, which is a leadership scholarship that paid full tuition. And when I was applying for it, it was an arduous process because like hundreds of people applied for it. It was like very high stakes. Um, but I knew that I wanted it because I knew that my parents couldn't afford to put me through college, even like a state college. And so I went through the process and I was able to get it. And it was great because it was going to be all tuition paid. But the thing is, it was in Minnesota and I lived in Chicago. And even like the process of applying for Posse, applying for scholarships, it's like this process of like asking for money, right? And so you have to prove yourself. You have to tell people, hey, I deserve this money because I'm good enough. And so subconsciously, like I felt a responsibility to like perform a certain way because all of these people were paying my tuition and I needed to prove myself to them. So from this like poor mentality came a real lack mentality, which told me there's only so much money, there's only so many resources, and it's a very limited amount, and you have access to it. And so, therefore, you have to do the best that you can with what you have because not everyone gets this, right? Not everyone you went to school with gets what you get. So, be grateful, right? And like, don't mess up, right? So, subconsciously, I went into college really already feeling pressured from my family to do well and like graduate and get a good job from like all the people who helped me get like scholarships and all of that and my teachers, right? And like all of these people that I looked up to, like I felt very pressured to perform well in school with a bunch of people that had access to very different kind of education than I did, right? Then I felt very very stressed because the difficulty of the schoolwork at the school was like way more than I was like expecting. Even though I had gone to like one of the best high schools in Chicago, like the amount of schoolwork and the difficulty was very challenging. And prior to that too, like and during college, like there were things that have happened to me that have impacted me like and my mental health like negatively that I never really like work through because like you just go through things and you don't know that something is not okay and so you figure it out, right, as it goes as you grow up. um and so I was dealing with like all of these things that I had gone through that I didn't really know were impacting me. And adding to that was like learning in school how Latina women, how Latinos, how Mexican women have been viewed, used, abused, like literally so many things that have happened, how we've been seen and like represented even, um, both in the context of like, the 1900s to now and before, right? Like learning about the massacre of indigenous people of America, of the whole America, right? Not just the United States of America, like learning about that and really putting myself in comparison with them, and then being surrounded by so many different people that were not like me, right? I was a minority in this school. I don't even know how many other Latinos were with me. It had to have been like less than 50, and sure, there were other people of color as well, but it was very small group. And so I felt very overwhelmed because there were so many white people. And I'm not saying that, you know, it wasn't like, anyways, I was about to go into a rant, but academic spaces, right, in general, historically have not been made with people of color in mind. I'll just leave it at that. Learning about the history really messed with my mind. Like, I was like, oh my god, like, I really, people that look like me are like have been historically like murdered, like tortured, like used, reused, like tossed, so many things, right? So I unfortunately learning it, I'm glad I learned it. I'm glad I learned it because now I understand things a lot more, but it really impacted me. It's almost like I re-experienced that trauma even though I didn't go through it, if that makes sense. And then lastly, like really understanding and seeing my peers, seeing other people like do like relatively well in school, and like knowing that that was possible for me if I just like applied myself, and being frustrated when I couldn't, right? And I think it obviously has a lot to do with many more things other than just being poor, but I think growing up poor really impacted and shaped how I even thought about getting help, right? Like, eventually I figured it out, but it really made me want to feel ashamed for not knowing what to do. It made me want to, like, not bother people, right? It made, and it sounds messed up as I'm saying it, like, now as a 30-year-old person, I'm like, of course you would need help, but so those are the ways that I come to mind when I think about how it impacted me, at least when I was in college. Now, to put on my therapist hat, I should get an actual hat. To put on my therapist hat, I want to talk about 6 specific aspects of our lives that have to do with our insecurity or confidence, and how poverty really impacts these 6 things, right? So health. If you don't have money, insurance, or the means to get checked up, right? Make sure that your health is okay. If you have any predetermined like medical conditions like diabetes, asthma, I don't know, any mental health condition like thyroidism, like any of these medical conditions, if you have them, that means you need probably medication and some sort of therapy, or like at least checkups, right? But if you don't have access to that, then like that's going to impact you negatively, right? And let's say nutrition, right? Again, to what I was saying earlier, if you don't have money or resources to get good food, or if the food you do have access to is like not great, right? Like canned food, or like high, fructose corn syrup food, like prepackaged food that's been there for a while. Like if all of the access you have or most of the access you have to food is like that has literally scientifically been proven to be connected to things like cancer, obesity, like any other, insert conditions here, right? Sleep. If you don't have access, again, to the money or resources you need to live, a dignified life, maybe you don't sleep, or maybe you sleep too much, or maybe you don't even have time to sleep, or you can't fall asleep because you're so worried about what you're going to eat tomorrow, right? Then, right, talking about exercise or like being moving around, like if you are poor, don't have access to these things, you're not gonna worry about going on a run or like going to lift weights. Like, what you have to do is prioritize your food, right? Your shelter, and like any other things that really come to mind, like for you in that moment. You're not going to be worried about exercising, right? Even though scientifically exercise has been correlated to well being overall, right? It helps if you just go for a walk 30 minutes a day, like scientifically proven for sure, right? Or if you like don't live in a neighborhood where you feel like you can go on a walk, again, right? Like these are all factors that can really impact you negatively and you don't even know it. And going hand in hand with that is safety, right? Physical safety. If you don't feel safe in your home, right, with the people you live with, or in your own body, right, because maybe you've gone through something that has like really impacted the way that you feel safe in your body, or if, I don't know, like there's, gang activity outside your house door, or I don't know, of someone who has a gun, who these things add up, right? And so I am biased because I grew up in a house that I considered poor when I was growing up. And so these things all kind of impacted me subconsciously and I didn't even know. And then the last thing I wanted to say was like relationships and friendships, right? You And I guess this is like so dependent on who you live with, like who you're around and stuff, but like if the relationships that you have are the only relationships you've ever seen. So for example, if I'm a teenager and I'm friends with like 10 friends and like 8 of my friends got pregnant by the time that they were 18, like then like I wouldn't see that as something, negative. Maybe my parents are like, don't do that and whatever, right? But again, lack of access to resources about reproductive health, stuff like that, right? But if I'm around people like that, then it wouldn't be that like uncommon to think about those sort of things, right? Am I getting across? Like, I hope I'm making a point of how these things like can really impact like how you view your specific like life through those lenses. And so all of these things, right? Like your health, your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, your safety, your relationships, all of them have an impact on how you feel about yourself, about how you can accomplish the goals you set out to, how other people view you, or if like other people can count on you, and like what you are able to do in the future, like planning for what you might do later on in life. Understanding this stuff now, I realize that all of those things, all those 6 things, were impacted negatively, and that led me to making unsafe choices for myself in college. Thank God I made it through. I was able to go to grad school, but it wasn't without any bumps in the road. It took a lot of help and I took extra time, but I guess I'm making this video so that I can tell the people who are maybe going through it or went through it that they're not alone, right? And the fact that poor, like, lack mentality is a thing, I think follows us into adulthood, into later on in life. And I think inevitably, to me, I feel like it's a sort of cage for my mind. Yeah, like that seems. No, it does. It definitely feels like some sort of cage around me. Like it's not a real thing. It's a mental viewpoint. It's a feeling of like I'm poor, I'm not good enough, I have to prove myself. And I don't feel that way now, but like I feel like as I've gotten older, I've become more confident in myself and my abilities and my skills because I have gathered them as I grow up, right? But I feel like that was very much like the foundation of who I was. Like when I got here as an immigrant, like constantly, like already having to prove myself, right? To the point when I was in high school, when I started to like apply to stuff and like needing to do all these clubs and do all this credit and like highlight how special I was to get like access to scholarships. And then in college, where I really had to prove myself in ways that I had never done before, and I was extremely alone, like so alone, even though I talked to my friends and my family all the time. Like it just felt really sad and alone. And then later on, now coming around to like understanding this in a very different way, understanding that my lack of access to not even a lot of money, just like more than I need, like the necessities, you know? It would have been like if I knew that I could just go home and like go to a different college and not have to stick it out in Minnesota. Like maybe I wouldn't have to go through some things that I went through. But again, I could have asked for help. I just didn't know. You know, it's just and we grow up with this very like black or white thinking, and obviously this has a lot to do with like other things I'm not mentioning, but I definitely felt like I had to stick it out, you know? And so talking about this cage now, I think feels very relevant. So maybe I'll talk about the cage later on. Okay, I think this is good enough for my video. Uh, if you watched it this far, tell me your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you like. I know I haven't been great about making a consistent posting schedule, but I really, really want to create more videos and like share what I learn, uh, share my points of views, and I definitely have a lot I think that needs to be said and that I think a lot of people would like to learn and watch and so I hope that you have a good day and don't forget that you matter whether or not you grow up in poverty. You matter and I love you. Even though I don't know you, I'm sending love and a hug to you if that's okay, if you consent. All right. Have a good night.